Guys, welcome back to another video. We have this very interesting article in regards to the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition from Deal Reporter. Generally, it's behind a paywall, but it's shown up here on this website, community.inanalytics.com. So let's go through it because they talk a lot about Call of Duty and some of the things that potentially could happen with the game and PlayStation. It says Microsoft's pledge to keep Activision Blizzard's blockbuster video game Call of Duty on PlayStation would face a high bar for approval should it be formally proposed as a behavioral remedy in the EU and UK reviews of the deal. Sources and an industry expert told this news service. Now, we already know, because this is from February 20th, but we already know that Xbox, they provided their remedies for Call of Duty with Nintendo, with NVIDIA GeForce Now, with the 10-year deal, and have said that they have that 10-year deal for PlayStation to sign. If you remember Brad Smith pulling out that envelope and saying, we'll open up Microsoft Word, we'll get out a pen, we'll make changes, but we have a deal here for PlayStation to at the very least negotiate and then sign going forward to make sure that Call of Duty is on their platform. It continues and says, as a European Commission's in-depth market investigation into the deals enters its core stage, Microsoft will face a deadline in the coming weeks to submit remedies in order to secure clearance of the transaction. Now, when it comes to the European Commission, we saw the article that did come out earlier or late last week where the European Commission apparently is likely going to go ahead and approve this deal because of the remedies that they did provide with those 10-year deals. It seemingly has been enough for them to reduce their worries about the effect of Call of Duty and competition and how taking it off of other platforms could be used to foreclose other platforms. With these 10-year deals, those worries have gone away. And then we have the UK, the CMA, which they're still in talks. Microsoft met with the UK. They're meeting with PlayStation, or they met with PlayStation a couple of days ago. They're going to be meeting with other third parties, I believe. And it says in the UK, third parties have until Wednesday, the 22nd of February to submit their comments on the agency's remedies notice. If we click over here, the remedies notice was this type of stuff that had to do with cloud gaming, that had to do with Call of Duty, that they talked also about like operating systems and Windows and the dominance there. We went over this previously, but this is the document that they are referring to, even asking about things like divestiture of Call of Duty, where Brad Smith had come out and said, that is unrealistic. We aren't going to sell off Call of Duty. In fact, they're probably not going to sell off anything in this deal for it to go through. Like that is just a no-go on Microsoft's side. It's all or nothing from what it sounds like. It says the software giant's 10-year pledge to retain access to Call of Duty to Microsoft's platform competitors, most notably Sony's PlayStation, will likely form the basis of the remedy proposal that Microsoft intends to make to the European Commission. We already know what they did there. Microsoft has been engaged in remedy discussions with the European Commission parallel to the agency's market investigation over the past several months, the first source said. The European Commission allows parties to formally submit remedies up to day 65 of its Phase 2 probe. Microsoft will have until March 2nd to submit remedies. And again, we already know that they've submitted their remedies and that the European Commission is likely to approve based off of the headlines and of the articles that we saw the other day. Now it continues here and says in December, Microsoft President Brad Smith said that it would offer equal access to Call of Duty to Sony, Nintendo, and Valve Steam for a period of 10 years. Those are the 10-year pledges that they did offer, and they even did offer it to Steam. But as you remember, Gabe Newell came out and pretty much said, we don't even want this. Sure, we'll sign the 10-year deal, but we don't even care because we trust Microsoft, we trust Xbox based off of their previous working engagements that they are good for their word. So you would think that it's not only that they're good for their word with Steam and Valve, they're probably good for their word with all the other third parties that they do deals with. One of the main things right now with this deal, with this acquisition, is the question of how do you enforce this 10-year deal, or how do you enforce that Call of Duty is the exact same across all of the platforms that it is going to be coming onto. That's something I think that people are wondering if that's going to be able to be looked at and made sure that on Nintendo, on PC, there isn't going to be what's going on right now with the marketing deal with PlayStation, where there isn't parity. On PlayStation, you get features and content that isn't there on the Xbox, that isn't there on PC, exclusive to PlayStation because they have that marketing deal, which is ending, I believe, in 2024. So Microsoft, we have heard, they have potentially offered the solution to have a third-party overview and review this to enforce the parity of Call of Duty across all of the different platforms. Says the EC generally market test remedies with third parties after submission. Sony, which have been vocal third party in this review, is likely to voice multiple concerns around the above mentioned remedy, said a third source familiar with the matter. These range from the enforceability of such complex behavioral remedies to issues around pricing, should Call of Duty be included in Microsoft's Game Pass subscription service? So here's where things get interesting in this article. We're going to hear about some of the things that PlayStation and Sony have worries about, even with 10-year deals. This one here, pricing if the game is in Xbox Game Pass. Microsoft's parity commitment could be very difficult to encode in a contract and enforce, said the third source. As it currently stands, Sony works with Activision from an early date to ensure that its controller is not just responsive, but offers one of the best console experiences, the source noted. So when they say that, the controller, I'm guessing they mean the DualSense controller, making it not lag, making it have the haptic feedbacks, the triggers. I know one thing from playing Call of Duty is that I absolutely hate the triggers on the DualSense. I don't like how it gets tough to push down, or it like shakes when you're firing your weapon. I've just completely turned them off. It doesn't, especially when you're playing multiplayer, it doesn't help. So all of these features with the DualSense haven't been that great for me, even though it's a good control. I have nothing against DualSense, but that alone, that feature is just very annoying. That is forced in on Call of Duty every time it releases on the PS5. Says another source of concern could stem from the fact that Sony's current contracts with Activision are in terms that are better than parity. So we saw this in a previous article or in documents, I believe, submitted to the CMA or the EU, I forget which regulatory body, but it showed that Sony was getting a deal, or they had cut a deal with Activision. It wasn't the 70-30 split. There was something else there that cut a better deal between Activision and Sony, and they are going to be worried that this is going to go away if this deal goes through, which in my opinion, I don't at any point or for any reason think that it makes any sense for Microsoft to have to honor a new deal with PlayStation. If they want to stick to the 70-30 split, they should stick to the 70-30 split, and that shouldn't be something that is up for the market authorities to enforce. That's literally a part of the business. As long as the game is there and there's a reasonable deal on the table, it shouldn't be enforced to keep that same deal that they had with Activision. Now, this here was noted by Joost Rietveld, who's associate professor at the University College London School of Management and a gaming industry specialist. As Microsoft disclosed in its CMA filings under Sony's current exclusivity contract, okay, so there it is. It is in the CMA filings that they showed this. With Activision, Call of Duty would be exclusive to PlayStation for a period of 30 days, while one version of the game was exclusive for a period of 1 year. So I'm not 100% sure what they're talking about there, but there is exclusive content for these periods. There was also the Spec Ops mode for a previous Call of Duty that was exclusive to PlayStation. I think it was Spec Ops Survival mode, exclusive to PlayStation for an entire year. And like, that's the type of stuff that if this deal goes through based off of what Microsoft is saying, based off of what Xbox is saying, is that's not going to be there. There's not going to be exclusive content. There's not going to be exclusive game modes for a year where you're just severing the community of players, especially because it is cross-play now. So that stuff is going to be going away, which right now currently is there with PlayStation. So finally, a key area of dispute may also be around pricing. Sony takes the view that it needs to be enabled to price Call of Duty competitively to what Microsoft could offer, said the third source familiar. A factor here is the shifts in the industry from console gaming offers, where games can be priced at 70 euros and where the revenue split is typically 30% for the platform, 70% for the publisher, to a subscription service model. So they are worried about this game going into Game Pass, that they won't be able to compete because they know people are going to look at the full priced $70 game on the PS5 and then look at it and say, well, I could just literally go pay 10 to 15 bucks for Xbox Game Pass and play it. Yeah, it's 10 to 15 bucks per month, but no, I'm getting access to all these other games that I probably would have never played if it wasn't for this service. And the reality of the situation is a lot of Call of Duty gamers see this, they'll go sign up to Game Pass, and then they'll probably be hooked to Game Pass. There'll be a lot of people that continue to be subscribed, and then they'll officially probably move over to the Xbox ecosystem when they see the value that's within Game Pass, the fact that it has Call of Duty, has other shooters in there, and there's just so many other things that they will discover and play, which we've seen numbers where people are playing more games than they've played before, discovering new games, discovering indies, all these types of things. And you would see that happen from Call of Duty players who were primarily on the PS5 or PS4 who would switch over to Xbox because Call of Duty is within Game Pass. And that's what Sony is definitely worried about, because they're going to lose customers because of the value of Xbox Game Pass. And they go on here and say, under the subscription service model, publishers are typically either paid upfront for the rights to their game, which can be good for smaller gaming studios, but less beneficial for blockbuster games like Call of Duty, which could likely see limit to their upside, said Reed Fellow. We know Phil Spencer's talked about the Game Pass deals that basically they're different deals for depending on the type of game it is, whether it's upfront covering marketing, development costs, or whether it is a pay per play type of thing or pay per download type of thing. Like he says here, just different deals for every single type of game out there. Another model for subscriptions is the Spotify style model, where it would be paid for share of time spent on the game. A third option would be a licensee, such as Sony, paying the wholesale price of Call of Duty multiplied by the number of users who play the game for more than a set amount of time. And that would be an extremely interesting thing to see happen, because it would have Sony, yeah, they're getting a good price on the game itself to get it onto their platform, but then they would have to actually pay Microsoft for people playing Call of Duty over a certain amount of time. And people spend every single year huge hours on that game. They would be paying a large sum of money to Xbox, to Microsoft, and that would help Xbox and Microsoft grow. Now, at the end of the day, if this deal does get approved, whether they do a licensee deal or not, PlayStation, they want to keep Call of Duty, of course, but they also know, which I think is why they're really not signing a deal yet for 10 years, why they are pushing against this deal more than anything. It isn't because they're really afraid of losing Call of Duty per se. It's because they know that even if they keep Call of Duty, it's a lose-lose for them. They are going to be paying Microsoft, so Microsoft can take Sony money and grow Xbox and grow their ecosystem and become bigger and bigger and bigger. So at the end of the day, Sony knows this is a scenario where they've lost. They've lost with this deal if it goes through. And now if they somehow are able to block it, it's just a much better outcome. It's for them. It seems like it's worth sacrificing their PR. It's worth sacrificing their public perception from a lot of people who are seeing some of the things that they are saying, especially because it's very hypocritical, some of the stuff that Sony has said with the exclusivity side of things. When you look at what they're doing with their games, look at what they're doing with Call of Duty right now, it's for them, it's worth sacrificing that stuff so that they don't have to fund Xbox and help Xbox grow with games like Call of Duty. Continues on here. Sony is likely to take the view that the contract on offer by Microsoft results in a diminished revenues for PlayStation, leaving it unable to put investments into its own games. So like we saw previously, they actually are saying they won't be able to create first-party games anymore, or at least at the same quality if they don't have Call of Duty. And pretty much if this deal goes through, they won't be able to do it because they're going to have diminished revenues. The fact that if this is true, which I don't know, they could be being hyperbolic about this. They could be exaggerating just to really do everything they can to get this deal to be blocked. But I'm sure there's financials and stuff that will be disclosed, I would assume, and regulators will see the truth one way or another. But at the end of the day, if this is true, to me, that is just, it's a bad model. It's something that would have broken down at some point, whether this deal happens or not. If your whole model is propped up on one franchise, a third-party franchise too, that is multi-platform, if it's propped up on that, then I don't know what to say. I mean, to me, that's something that doesn't make any sense. I don't actually believe it, especially when you've seen some of the sales numbers like God of War Ragnarok recently and how popular Sony's first-party lineup is. Doesn't make sense to me, but I guess we will see whether the regulators see that, believe it, and how that affects their decision with this case. News here says it would be forced to offer PlayStation Plus subscription service at a higher price than Game Pass, they noted. So they believe that they would have to increase their prices for PlayStation Plus, which would just destroy PlayStation Plus for a lot of people, I think, because like they're not even giving their first party content. It's already, I think it's around the same price depending on if you pay by year, but I think per month, if you're going on a monthly basis, I think PlayStation Plus at the highest tier is already more expensive than Game Pass. So if they're going to raise the prices and not put their first party content in there, I think that a lot of people are going to unsubscribe from the highest tier of PlayStation Plus. News here says, as for Microsoft, it takes the view that the 10-year remedy covers access to Call of Duty on its subscription service, PlayStation Play, and will offer a much better revenue split. That Sony's existing contract with Activision said the first and fourth source familiar. It will likely result in hundreds of millions of windfall revenues for SIE, the first source said. So I'm not sure. They could probably got some words mixed up here or whatever, because it doesn't really like PlayStation Play, but they probably mean PlayStation Plus. And they're saying that this will offer a better revenue split. So they will be keeping more of their revenues than the 30% potentially, maybe 40%. So that, again, it won't hinder competition. If they did that, if they went to these regulators, which I'm saying I don't see how this is something that should be enforced, but it may be this is the thing that 100% gets this deal passed and approved by the CMA specifically. If they go and say, hey, we're going to have a better revenue split with PlayStation specifically, we're going to do a 60-40 split. They're going to keep more of their revenues so that they don't feel like that the returns are going to be diminished and they can't invest into their own ecosystem and into their own games, and that they are giving us less money so that we can continue to grow and then potentially foreclose them in the future. Maybe that's what they're going to do in order to get this deal passed. And end things off here, the UK remedies, we saw the documents that came out the other week. They're looking for remedies, structural remedies, and they kept the door open for behavioral remedies. And Rightful, the professor, says a structural remedy would also be very complicated. There are 3 studios that are working on Call of Duty within Activision, and any carve-out would likely require the development capabilities and not solely the IP for the game. The 4th source familiar with the transaction said that a structural remedy would call into question the deal and would likely prove to be exceptionally complex. And structural remedies, I don't think that Microsoft would do. If they have to go that route, maybe they will walk away from this deal, which we would see what they would do with all of that extra spare cash that they have now not locked up in the Activision Blizzard acquisition. Sony declines to comment on this, but a Microsoft spokesperson said that the company is committed to offering an effective and easily enforceable solution to address regulators' concerns, saying our commitment to grant long-term 100% equal access to Call of Duty to Sony, Nintendo, Steam, and others preserves the deal's benefit to the gamers and developers and increases competition in the market. And they've been saying that all along. So this was a pretty interesting article looking at PlayStation's point of view, that literally to them, there is not a single remedy for them that they will be happy with. And it looks like they're going to go to the end and try to get this deal blocked. But like I've said in previous videos, I think they have a good pulse on whether these commissions, whether these regulators are leaning one way or the other. And from that article, that the EU, the European Commission, is likely to approve this deal. The CMA, at some point, with remedies that Microsoft are willing to, will be likely to approve the deal. You'll probably see Sony strike a deal with Microsoft before it goes all the way to court in August with the FTC. That's my prediction as to what is going to happen, because from the stuff that we've been reading recently, it's more positive. Like maybe last month, it seemed more negative. So it keeps going back and forth. We don't actually know where this deal is going, but it seems right now slightly leading towards Microsoft's side of things. But I'm going to leave the video there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support. I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.